Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 17th of January of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. First we're going to start with the Kupiansk front line, with the Kupiansk-Liman front line. These days, this front line is very active, and the Russian sources are saying that the Russian military experts are saying that the Russians activated in this area and they try to return control over the towns by the name of Makeyevka and Nevska, over these two towns. Let's update this map one more time for better understanding of the situation, because according to the Russian sources, a town like Plasyanka and all the towns that located on the north from Makeyevka is under Russian control. Every single town and right till Zhirolne and Kalimichuha, and after that now we can say that the towns that located on the north from this area is under Ukrainian control. But this area is under Russian control. Let's return back to the Russian sources map just for confirmation. As you can see, this is Kalimichuha, Zhirolne on the river Zhiribets, and on the south everything till Makeyevka. So the Russians activated in this area, and now they try to push from the north in direction to the south to return control over Makeyevka and to return control or to get as close as possible to Nevska. They're very active in this area. They pushes the Ukrainians. As a result of clashes on the Kupiansk-Liman front line, the Ukrainians lost around 120 soldiers and something around 12 armored vehicles. The Russians managed to spot and destroy one commandos group in this area. When talking about the artillery duels, as a result of effective artillery duels, the Ukrainians lost another one howitzer D-20 in the town by the name of Terny, and another howitzer Akatsiya in the town by the name of Nevskaya. A lot of people these days, a lot of military experts from Russia are talking about upcoming offensive operation in Kupiansk-Liman front line. I believe that we are going to see this offensive operation. We discussed this operation yesterday, that if the Russians want to return control or to take control over Slaviansk and Kramatorsk, they need to attack these towns from the north and from the west. And the only way to do this is to return back to Izum bridgehead. For now, there are no changes on the front line. For now, everything is calm. Just some activity on Svatovo front line in direction of Liman. But another option, another thing that the Russians discussed this situation. One plan to attack in direction of Slaviansk Kramatorsk from Izum, like we saw this at the first stage of this special operation. But there is another option, another plan to attack from Svatovo to the south in direction of Yampol, and to establish control over this back, to push Ukrainians from this bridgehead on the west side of Zhiribets river in direction of Liman, to return control over this area, to clear forest, and to try to establish fire control over this road. So over this road, and to cut supply and support, and not even the supply and support of forces from Seversk, but to cut, let's say, retreat road for forces in Seversk along the Seversky-Donetsk river. So this might be some kind of tactical plan that the Russians might try to achieve to get to the Seversky-Donetsk, of course, in this situation, the best solution to establish control over Yampol, because from this area it's very easy to control the Seversky-Donetsk river and to control the road along this river, and from this bridgehead to cut Seversk from Slaviansk along the Seversky-Donetsk river. So this is a possible solution, because as we know, these days the Russians continue attacking Vesele, continue attacking Razdolovka, Krasnopolovka. Furthermore, when talking about the Russian sources map, as you can see, the Russian source map has been updated. Now the Russians shows the 100% control over the railroad station Sol. And from this bridgehead, of course, the Russians may try to attack the Ukrainians in direction of Seversk as well. So this is some kind of small cauldron, and of course to achieve this goal is much more easier than to encircle Slaviansk and Kramatorsk, because of course we understand it's completely two different operations. When talking about encirclement of Slaviansk Kramatorsk from north and the west, it's a strategic operation, but when talking about Seversk, it's a tactical operation. Furthermore, we understand, and a lot of military experts in the West and the Russian are saying that today the forces in Seversk, Ukrainian army in Seversk, expect to receive a retreat order ordered to retreat, and maybe they will leave this bridgehead even without any encirclement operation in direction like we discussed right now. Maybe the Russians need to make just a small push, and if they're able to penetrate the first defense orders, like in town like Vasyukovka, Razdolovka, Kuzminovka, Vyimka, and maybe this is going to be some kind of trigger, and the Ukrainians will start evacuation because they understand that they might be encircled. There are a lot of forces in this forest. There are a lot of forces in Siversk and Serebryanka and Grigorievka, and of course it's not a good idea to risk with this army because the Ukrainians have problems, a lot of problems on the front line, and I believe it's not a very good thing to lose another army, or maybe not like an army but another group or something like this, because I'm not sure about the real number of the Ukrainian forces in this area, but I believe that we can talk about 5 till 10,000 soldiers in this area, and all these forces might be collapsed, might be destroyed or reduced by the Russians. When talking about Solidar, there are still heavy clashes around salt mine number 7. As you can see, the Russians are showing us that they still haven't established control over this mine, over this salt cave. As you can see, they show the gray zone that the Russians tried to develop their offensive operation in direction of Blagodatne. And according to this map, as you can see, this very interesting update, the Russians managed to cross the railroad near Blagodatne. In this area, they managed to establish control over this street. To tell the truth, I haven't seen these reports anywhere. I haven't found them anywhere, but I believe that this might be some kind of true. So if the Russians manage to cross the railroad and get control over the streets, so of course anyway sooner or later they will be able to establish control over this part of Blagodatne. I'm talking about this area, and after that they will be able to establish real and complete control over Blagodatne as well. The only thing they need is to cross the river. Of course, they will have to spend some time for this, but for now, the Russians, they don't need to be in a hurry on this bridgehead. They need to complete some kind of regrouping. They need to complete some kind of reinforcement of this area and so on. And after that, they will be able to continue their offensive operation. For now, when talking about Solidar bridgehead, they've done everything they need. They took control over the town. Now they're finishing the clearing of the salt mines. They managed to cross the railroad. They managed to establish bridgehead on the Ukrainian side of the railroad. So they've done everything they need. Now they need some time, 2 weeks, 1 week, I believe, and after that they can continue. As we discussed, we can say that already around 3 or 5 days left since the slowdown of the Solidar offensive operation. So that means that the Russians have already started the rotation process and the process of fulfilling this area and so on. So I believe that maybe by the end of the next week the Russians will activate their movements in direction of Seversk, maybe in direction of Dubovo-Vasilievka on the north of Bakhmut and so on. Now let's move to Bakhmut itself. There are also a lot of updates from this area, and the most hot point in this area is Klishchiivka. There are very heavy clashes there. The Russians still haven't established control over this town. They got one trenches on the southwest of the Klishchiivka. They managed to get inside of Klishchiivka from the northeast part. I believe that the Russians control some part of Klishchiivka in this area, but this town is still in the gray zone. The Ukrainians are moving more and more reinforcements in this area. The Ukrainians don't want to lose this bridgehead because they understand the value of this town. Not even of this town, because I believe that by the end of the previous week all these buildings were reduced to ruins. The most important, of course, is these trenches and this fortification, this forest line, and this as well. So these two positions might be a very perfect checkpoint for the Russians at the tactical objectives that they are trying to receive during the winter period of this war. And even if I believe that they are able to develop further their bridgehead in direction of Ivanovska, Chasiv Yar, but anyway, if they are not able, it will take a lot of time from the Ukrainian side to push the Russians back from this area. Furthermore, today we received a lot of updates from the Ukrainian sources, and some of them were saying that Zaluzhny, the head of the Ukrainian army, asked Zelensky permission to evacuate forces from Seversk and from Bakhmut as well. in direction of Chasov Yar, Konstantinovka, towards more reliable position. And I believe that this might be a very nice decision at this point of time, but I'm not sure if Ukrainians are ready for this, because they had a lot of losses during the previous time, and I'm not sure that Ukrainians are ready to receive another loss on the front line. At least not at this moment. First, they need to receive some kind of improvements and some kind of signed contracts with the Western countries for supply and support of modern weapons. Maybe after that they will make this difficult decision to step back from this front line. Now we're moving to Donetsk, and today we receive a lot of updates from Donetsk. So for now we can say three things. The Russians activated on Kupiansk-Liman front line, and they started pushing the Ukrainians from the north, and the main goal and the main objective they want to achieve is to encircle Seversk or to return or to get control over this town. We can say that the Russians slowed down in Solidar, at least for a while. They're finishing the clearing operation. Maybe we're going to see some active clashes near Veselaya, Razdolovka, Krasnopopovka and Krasnaya Gora and Paraskovyevka, Blagodatная. We will see. We won't see, let's say, some kind of penetration operation in this area, like broad frontline attacks. We won't see deep penetration in this area. The thing that we're going to see is that the Russians ruining one town by another, all these towns we just mentioned, and we will see how the Russians establish control of this town. As you can see, there are not much movements because everything is very close. But from the other side, it will be like routine job, like military job, everyday job, and so on. Of course, the Russians will try to complete the mission in Klishchevka, but anyway, we won't see big penetrations and deep attacks in this area for some period of time, maybe a week, maybe two, I believe so. And another important updates are coming from Donetsk front line, and as you can see, the Russian sources map has been updated. When talking about Vadiana, there are no updates in this area, but when talking about Marinka, there are updates, and I'm talking about this small bag, this one that starts on the south of Marinka, that moves near Pobeda, and that is heading towards Novomikhailivka. So this back. When talking about the previous versions of this map, there were no such back, and during today the Russians reported about big progress on Marinka front line, and today the Russians are saying that just 300 meters left to take control over entire Marinka. Let's just try to calculate and understand what does it mean 300 meters. And when talking about Marinka, we calculate 300 meters, so that means that the Russians, maybe according to some Russian sources, the Russians control Marinka, every single building, every single block that's located on the right side of this area. So all this area is under Russian control. So let's update this according to this information we have. Maybe it's not like the real numbers. I'm saying that maybe this is like soft numbers. Maybe the Russians control less or more or something like this. But today they was very, very happy with these updates. They were very strong with this update. So I believe that it's some kind of true and or maybe very close to truth. Another important update are coming from Pobeda, and this is the most important. Today we received the first confirmation of the fact that the Russians managed to establish control over this small village on the south of Marinka, and that the Russians finishing clearing operation. And this might be very true because, as you can see, the Western source map have been updated as well, and the border, this red border, is very close to this town. So, or according to the Western sources, this town is in the gray zone, or maybe the Russians have already established control over this area. And this is a real collapse for the Ukrainians, because now the Russians got very close to the one important area, is the cross in the town by the name of Konstantinovka. I'm talking about this area. This is the focal point. This is the focal area that the Russians tries to get as close as possible, because this cross the Ukrainian uses for many purposes. One of them is to supply and support Novomikhailivka, and the Russians, and we see the clash. We've started the clashes for Novomikhailivka started somewhere maybe in April of 2022. So almost a year passed since the Russians started the battle for Novomikhailivka, and now they're as close as possible since the beginning of special operation to get control over this town and to collapse this front line. And from Novomikhailov, of course, the Russians will be able to move along these towns, and the main target is Kurakhova, and the main target is, of course, Ugledar. And now, as you can see, the Russians from Pobeda are able to it's like 7 kilometers to Konstantinovka. Now the Russians are able to change their focus on this town, and they will try to attack. They are attacked this town already now. They will try to reduce supply and support that Ukrainians move in direction of Novomikhailivka. And now also this front line has been activated. Now the Russians are very active here. And now these days, I believe that the Russians try to change their focus from Solidar to this direction. And of course, this is also another problem for the Ukrainians. And the thing is that now they need to move reserves from Solidar Bakhmut front line in direction of South Donetsk front line. When talking about Donetsk and South Donetsk area, the Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours lost around 100 soldiers and something around 15 armored vehicles. But when talking about artillery duels, we see that the losses from the Ukrainian side are much higher. They lost Raiders, they lost Gyatsin B howitzer, they lost D-30, as far as I remember, D-30 in Zaporozhye area. So the Russians continue their effective artillery duels. The only question I have about this front line is Krasnogorovka. To tell the truth, I don't understand the Russians' plans about this town, because to attack Krasnogorovka in front is the same situation as in Marinka. It's just a waste of a lot of time. They need to find a solution how to encircle, but we still haven't received any reports from Nivoyskaya. And the Russians still try to attack this town. Maybe as soon as the Russians establish control over Nivoysk, and I believe that they're very close to complete this mission, maybe after that, the process of taking control over Krasnogorovka will be, the speed of this will be increased. But for now, I'm not sure about their Russian plans about Krasnogorovka. This is completely untouched town, just with artillery attacks and so on. The Russians are not inside of this town. They don't control any single block. So to start everything from the beginning, I'm not sure. They will try to find a solution, or maybe they have already found a solution. Let's wait a little bit. I believe that soon we're going to understand everything. And another important updates are coming from the north of Donetsk. The Russian source map has been updated, as you can see. Now, according to the Russians, we received this update yesterday in the evening. They control the north part of Vodyane. And this is very important because now the Russians have at least 2 bridgehead on the north of this river, let's say on the Ukrainian side of this river. So let's update this map first to understand the real Russian position in this area. So now the Russians control something like this. They have a safe roads. It's like previous ex-Ukrainian position, ex-Ukrainian roads from Piesky in this direction. Of course, when talking about the Ukrainians, believe me, every single line in this area is fortifications from the Ukrainian side, but anyway, at least it's something than nothing. And now the Russians are able to target the Russian artillery and to attack all these trenches and to move to the north in direction of Severna and to develop and try to complete, or the best word, to develop their encirclement operation of Avdiivka. Because to encircle Avdiivka, when talking about the progress on the ground, you don't need to do a lot. When talking about encirclement of Avdiivka, you need to take just 2 towns. These small Severna towns and this Tonninka. So the Russians need to get here. So if the Russians are able to get in direction of Tonninka, believe me, it's already encirclement of Avdiivka. So it's already a cauldron. The situation here will be much worse than in Solidar. It's not a cauldron, but it's not operational encirclement. It's going to be a tactical encirclement. And from this moment, we can start counting days before Avdiivka falls. Just 2 towns. But to cross to take these 2 towns, to cross just, let's say, 5 kilometers, the Russians will spend, I believe, maybe a month or even more, maybe up to 2 months, and they will pay, I believe, maybe of few thousand soldiers will be killed during this process. Maybe not few, but up to maybe few, because it's very close to Avdiivka, to this fortification. There are a lot of Ukrainians, and of course they will not give up, and they understand the value and the risk to step back from Avdiivka. Just 5 kilometers, but you will have to spend up to 2 months and to pay up to a few thousand of lives of Russian soldiers to get this progress, to receive this progress. But after that, everything will be very fast, and maybe the Ukrainians will be forced to step back. Of course, if the Russians increase the pressure in direction of Krasnogorovka and Veselaya, another 3 kilometers and thousands of killed of soldiers, but this is going to, in this case, this is going to be a real cauldron and collapse and the end of Avdiivka story. If the Russians are ready to start doing this, I believe they're ready, or at least very soon they will be ready, or they will try to develop something in Ugledar, because the Russians are activated in Ugledar as well. And now this is the best time to do this, because now there is just one road to supply Ugledar, this one, and some part of this road moves from Ivlivka, and another one, of course, from Konstantinovka. So these just two roads to supply this town. And if the Russians are able to develop their bridgehead, and I believe that as soon as Marinka falls, they will try to move along this N15 road, and then they will move to the south and try to establish their position along the brushes and forest lines in this area. I'm not sure that they are able to cross the fields and to storm these towns very fast. All these fields are mined, but they're able to get as close as possible, and after that, using the targeting process, the main goal, the main thing they need to do is to get as close as possible and start targeting. The Russian artillery, the Russian aircrafts, the Russian drones, they will do everything they can, and they will do everything they need. The only thing that the Russians need at this stage of this war is targeting. They need very effective, with a very high quality targeting. What does it mean? They need something, they need devices, they need people who are able to show the target where to attack. And then the Russians will complete. They have a lot of rockets, they have a lot of artillery systems, a very accurate artillery system that they will do all job. The thing they need is targeting. And if you want to have targeting, that means that you need to get as close as possible, and you need to see the target right in front of you. And from these fields, from these brushes, from trenches along this field, it's the best position to establish real fire control over this area. And I'm not sure that Ukrainians even are able to hold this area for a very long time. But even to do this, the Russians need to cross another 3 kilometers from Marinka, from this road to the south, and only then they will be able to do this. And to cross these 3 kilometers, it's another month and maybe another 1,000 of killed soldiers. If the Russians have these resources, I believe now they have, but let's see. Anyway, they don't have any other option. By the way, while doing this video, we got an update that the Russians managed to establish final control over this salt mine number 7. So let's update this map, and now the Russians control this area, and they have established real powerful bridgehead in this area, and now they will try to, I believe, to complete all the necessary goals in the towns around this Solidar. I'm talking about Krasnaya Gora, I'm talking about Paraskovivka, Blagodatnaya, Krasnopopovka, Razdolovka, Veselaya. So they will try to collapse this area, and they will try to encircle Seversk. When talking about Zaporozhye, there are no changes in this area. The Ukrainians are not moving in this area, just regular artillery duels. As you can see, as a result of such a duel, the Ukraine lost another artillery system. The Russian military experts and the Ukrainian military experts are saying that nobody is going to start any offensive operation in this area. Nobody have resources for this. So let's see. Anyway, sooner or later we're going to understand the real picture in this area as well. Another important thing about Avdiivka, as you can see, the Russians continue their effective duels in this area as well, and as a result of the artillery duels during the previous 24 hours, the Ukraine lost Polish artillery system Dana. They lost another Gyatsint B in the area of Avdiivka. So as we can say, and it's very interesting that the progress that the Russians managed to achieve during the previous months, starting from December till the middle of January, is very likely that was a result of very effective artillery duel. We know that there is a very big ratio between the Ukrainian artillery system and the Russian artillery system. Some sources are saying that the ratio is 1:6, and this and this ratio allowed the Russians to suppress completely the Ukrainian artillery. By the way, during the previous week, we haven't received updates about HIMARS losses from the Ukrainian side, and this is very important. Or the Ukrainians try to save this system before the upcoming March offensive operation or March battles on the front lines. Or maybe they don't have rockets and they expect for another supply. But anyway, it's a very interesting situation. When talking about the previous days, we saw a lot of losses of the old Soviet artillery system like D-20 and D-30, of Getzenberg, Akatse, of all the Soviet. And during the previous days, we see less and less losses of M777 artillery systems. Very interesting. So let's follow this situation as well. Another important topic that I would like to discuss with you today, I would like to discuss with you the Wagner's PMC and so on. And this is the most important topic for today, Wagner PMC. And not just Wagner, no, Wagner PMC. The thing is that if you remember, when the Wagner started recruiting process in the prisons and so on, and so they have some kind of system of the recruiting process. And the most important thing is the contract. As always, as everywhere, contract is the most important. What is signed on the paper and what is signed by the parties. And according to the Wagner contract, the duration of the service is 6 months. So when talking about January, that means that the contracts that were signed by Wagner's, by the soldiers in Wagner's in July, they have been expired. So today, or in June, or July, June, they have expired. They have been expired, and all these soldiers are released. And this is the most important thing, because during the previous 2 weeks, I've mentioned a lot of videos in the open source, in internet, how the head of Wagner, Prigozhin, was like talking with the soldiers, with those one whose contracts have been expired. He was with these people, and he was on the territory of Russian Federation, and all these people returned back home. I asked myself, why do we see so many videos about that? And now I understand that this is some kind of advertisement. So we know when the prisoners signed the contracts with Wagner's, I believe that many of them thought that it's some kind of fake or it's some kind of another trap, but the conditions in Russian prisons is so bad, so they decided to make this decision, and they made the decision. They joined the Wagner's. And now they try to advertise the Wagner's PMC by showing that a lot of people, it's like hundreds of people, these days return back home after 6 months of service. There were a lot of people, everybody was very happy. They were shaking hands with Prigozhin, the head of Wagner. They were very happy, and they wish Wagner's good luck and so on. And this is now a very nice advertisement. All of these people I saw in the videos, like ex-prisoners. Imagine yourself, you was in the prison. If you were in the prison and your term is 10 or 15 years, you served just 6 months in some PMC on the fresh air, on fields in Ukraine, where you are able to feel your life as much as possible, and 6 months later you're completely released without any problems with authorities, with the government, and so on. It's the best advertisement. And the biggest, I know how to say, in November we saw the highest activation of this recruiting process in Wagner's in September and October. And I did my own calculation, and according to my own calculation, and then this information was confirmed from many sources, Wagner's managed to sign a contract with around 24,000 soldiers from prisons, like ex-prisoners, 24,000 soldiers. Prisoners left the prison, signed a contract with the Wagner's. And now these guys returns back home. Of course, those one who signed contract in September, in November, in October, they are still on the front lines. And even from this perspective, we can calculate, of course, first of all, the main goal for Wagner's is not to release as much as possible prisoners, killers, thieves, and so on. The thing that they need to do, They have a contract with the government, with the Russian government, and they need to achieve goals. And for these goals, they are receiving money. For this money, they can develop their private military company. So these guys who signed contracts in October, their contracts expires in March. So in less than 3 months. In March. So that's why the Wagners now these days will try to activate all their movements. They will try to use their reserves as much as possible because they understand that in March they will have to release these soldiers. I believe that the conversion rate in these in Wagners are very high, at least among the soldiers whose contracts have been expired. Of course, all these guys whose contracts have been expired, they move back to the territory of Russian Federation. They will spend all their money, and believe me, they earned a lot of money during these 6 months. They will spend every single dollar, every single ruble. I don't know how they're going to do this. Maybe they will pay for debts, maybe they will have help their families, or maybe they will drink a lot of vodka or something like this. I don't know. But anyway, at some certain time, in a month or in 2, they will be in front of making decision or turn back because they don't have money. They've been in the prison for the last few months, few years. They don't know how to do anything. They don't know how to fix laptops, how to fix shoes, how to sell products. They know nothing, and the only thing they know is how to kill people, how to kill enemy soldier. And of course, in this case, the conversion rate is very high, and a lot of these guys will return back. Furthermore, you need to understand that, of course, Wagner's PMC is not just the structure that when you return back, you will go back in infantry and they will force you to storm another town. Of course not. These guys who passed 6 months, it's a resource, it's an asset. And of course, the Wagners as a company will try to save assets as long as possible. And all these guys who returns back, they will have a higher position on the ladder of all these things. And of course, there are high chances they will survive. And they understand this. And a lot of them will return. But this is about those whose contracts expires in like these days. But now imagine yourself if you're a prisoner and 3-4 months ago, when there was active phase of recruiting, you didn't believe Wagners. You didn't believe that they're saying that all is true, and you thought that you would be killed like in a week as soon as anything starts. And now they see this thing. They see that prisoners returned back home. They see the guys they were sitting with in the same prisons on the video, how they returned back home. And how do you think, what is their next step? They will join Wagner. And I believe that as a mobilization, as a recruiting process during the next months, they will be able to recruit another 30,000 of prisoners. Believe me, I'm not even don't even doubt about this. Don't forget that right after the mobilization in Wagner PMC in October, September, right after them, the Russians announced about the global mobilization in the Russian Federation. So I believe that by March or by February, as soon as most of the contracts expires in Wagner's, they will start another recruit company. They will prepare a lot of advertisement, a lot of video of happy ex-prisoners who return back home, and many other things. They will join more forces, more stormtroopers, and after that the Russians will start their own mobilization if we don't see any progress in diplomacy way. I'm talking about some kind of negotiations and so on. Anyway, March and April is going to be very hot with the fresh forces, with the fresh ex-prisoners. This is the best resource, I believe so. This is the best resource because Wagner's, they're by themselves, they're very experienced. They know how to train, how to cheat, they know how to take towns, they know how to take fortifications, and they have the most powerful resource. They have people who don't have anything to lose, or to go back to prison and sit another 15 years, or try to survive and to get back home. I don't know, something like this. So anyway, during the winter period, the Russians will develop their tactical position all over the front line, in Marinka, in the south of Ukraine, in Ugledar, in Solidar, in Bakhmut, in Seversk, in Kupiansk, in Liman. They will develop a tactical position. They will try to reduce the tactical benefits, the benefits from tactical position of Ukrainians. And in March and April, as soon as the Western Ukraine receive Western weapon, we're going to see another heavy battle, the biggest battle ever, that will determine not the next phase of this special operation, that will determine the end of this special operation, in which favor this special operation is going to be. And these special operations can't continue for endless period of time. Anyway, this special operation is going to be finished. I think today that this special operation is going to be finished somewhere by August of this year, of 2023. I'm not sure that countries, the powers over the world, are ready to prolong this special operation for another year. I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure about the Ukrainians that they are ready to suffer another year. I'm not sure that the Russians want to all these games for another year because they have elections the next year. Anyway, we'll see, and we will understand sooner or later what's going to be next. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon. Have a good day. Bye bye.